Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate that. Dying this morning. I would encourage you all to pray as well. Many of you know, as I've been communicating to you about my boss at work. Basically a non-believer, confesses to be a heathen. He believes in his family comes from like this upbringing and being Vikings. So they literally he still literally is in that mindset. And I've been kind of chipping away at him, and he always calls me his spiritual advisor. He said, I don't know how that works. He was sitting there telling somebody, he's like, he's my advisor, my spiritual advisor. But a spiritual advisor to a heathen, how does that work? And a few weeks ago, he's like, Dave, I think I need to make you the high priest around here. And he's always taking little jabs and this and stuff like that. I said, well, sir, that sounds like I'm going to need a pretty good-sized robe. But anyway, I would appreciate you praying for him. Friday, they walked him out. He lost his job. And I knew something was kind of up. Somebody turn this down a little bit because it's kind of loud. But Friday they walked him out. The HR manager was walking with him to have him go out of the building. Recently, the general manager decided that everybody that made a mistake, any mistake, because he's the director of operations, he was getting wrote up for it. Fortunately, there's a lot of mistakes, and him and the big boss kind of went head-to-head several times over certain issues. But I walked out, when she turned, I went to tell him something. I was going to tell him to give an update. I thought maybe at first he was, they were just talking and she just happened to be there, but looking at his face, I knew what happened. And I talked with him at the car, and long story short, he's got a very long, complex history from traveling in a secular rock band to going through divorce and going. He was an alcoholic and then went into the AA and was trying to get out of there. So this weekend would have been his 1-year sobriety celebration, and so he just kind of stood there. You've never seen a Viking cry. I got to witness that. He was trying to hold it together, but his chin was quivering, and he said, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. But, he was completely devastated. I know that look. I've seen that look. I've had that look before. And my heart goes out to him because, I feel as though there's certain little victories that I've won in that battle with him. I've never refuted anything that he's projected. He's had the Christian jokes, and I could have got upset, and I could have said, that's offensive, and yada yada, but I didn't. I kept my mouth. I held my peace, and just loved him, and just reached out to him. So he said, hang on to my number. I said, is the number that you gave me your personal number, or is that your work phone that they now have? I want to make sure that I have your number and that you keep mine. And I said, you're going to be strong, and I don't want you to lose sight of the goals that you've set for yourself and the progress that you've made. You stay strong. So please pray for Kelly, that he would not fall off of that and delve deeper into that, but pray for him, and that through this tragedy, as I was explaining to someone, I believe, pastor, that when you go to chop down a tree with a hatchet, this is pretty much the way I equate this. I'm all about simple analogies anyway. With him regarding salvation and me reaching him, would be like me chopping through an oak tree that had been here for 60 years with a dull hatchet. You take a little bit here, you take a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. God knows my heart, that I care about him, that I'm concerned for his soul. And it would take forever for me to chop through that tree. But I like to think that maybe God said, I see you chopping at that huge tree with this little tiny thing. Let me help you. And he kicked it over. So maybe this will be the thing that broke him to help him to see that God loves him. 3 different occasions, and the only thing that I've really tried to combat with him is when he says, and he usually says it in front of other people that basically that he's just so bad that neither side wants him. And that was the one argument that I always said. I said, I'm going to have to agree to disagree with you on that one. I said, that side really wants you.
Yeah. Amen.
Really wants you. I said, that side wants you too. This side really wants you. So I've been making little progresses with him. But please pray for him, because I'm concerned about him. I'm going to reach out to him tomorrow and check in on him and see how he's doing. All right, let's get into our lesson. We're going back to Amos chapter 1 for continuing this series. Yet have ye not returned? And we're going to look at some things as God permits, as we have time. I'm not in a great hurry to try to get through all this stuff. I want us to take what time that we need to understand it. And kind of move forward. I don't think that there's going to be a lot that we're going to have to stick in one place over, but I do want us to kind of move through this, because we're going to see some awesome things, I believe, that God has for us in the book of Amos. So we're going to go to Amos chapter 1. We're going to actually read 2 chapters this morning and try to cover as much as we can within that. So we're going to go Amos chapter 1, and then we're going to go to the end of chapter 2. I know that's a lot of reading, and that's another reason I got water. Amen. Yeah, I appreciate that. I might have to get me one of those pastoral hats with water and a straw and a fan. Amen. What a sight that would be. That would be pretty funny, I think. All right. So I guess I better put these things on just so I don't mess up something. I know they look ridiculous. Yeah, they do. My wife says they do. They do. She's the help me. Amen. She's the help me. She will tell you when something is wrong, when your tie is ugly or you don't match. God has given her to you for that purpose. Don't take offense. She's trying to help. So this coming week, this is one of the burdens of the older man as things are starting to change. And I'm going to see if I can have Brother Aaron, we can talk about maybe a class action against my company for straining my eyes to the point that I now need these. And we'll go over the details later, brother, and then we'll give 50% to the church. Amen. So, yeah. So, anyway, all right. Let me put these ugly things on and we'll get rolling. Amos chapter 1. The words of Amos, who was among the herdmen of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. And he said, the Lord will roar from Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the habitations of the shepherds shall mourn, and the top of Carmel shall wither. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Damascus, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have threshed Gilead with threshing instruments of iron. But I will send a fire into the house of Hazael, which shall devour the palaces of Ben-Hadad. I will break also the bar of Damascus, and cut off inhabitant from the plain of Avon, and him that holdeth the scepter from the house of Eden. And the people of Syria shall go into captivity unto Kir, saith the Lord. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Gaza, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they carried away captive the whole captivity, to deliver them up to Edom. But I will send a fire on the wall of Gaza, which shall devour the palaces thereof. And I will cut off the inhabitant from Ashdod, and him that holdeth the scepter from Ashkelon. And I will turn mine hand against Ekron, and the remnant of the Philistines shall perish, saith the Lord God. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Tyrus, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof. Anybody seeing a pattern yet? Okay? Because they delivered up the whole captivity to Edom, and remembered not the brotherly covenant. But I will send a fire on the wall of Tyrus, which shall devour the palaces thereof. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. But I will send a fire upon Teman, which shall devour the palaces of Bozrah. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have ripped up the women with child of Gilead, that they might enlarge their border. But I will kindle a fire in the wall of Rabbah, and it shall devour the palaces thereof, with shouting in the day of battle, with a tempest in the day of the whirlwind. And their king shall go into captivity, he and his princes together, saith the Lord. Chapter 2, verse 1. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Moab, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he burned the bones of the king of Edom into lime. But I will send a fire upon Moab, and it shall devour the palaces of Kithra. And Moab shall die with a tumult, and with shouting, and with the sound of the trumpet. And I will cut off the judge from the midst thereof, and will slay all the princes thereof with him, saith the Lord. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Judah, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have despised the law of the Lord, and have not kept his commandments, and their lies caused them to err, after the which their fathers have walked. But I will send a fire upon Judah, and it shall devour the palaces of Jerusalem. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Israel, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they sold the righteous for silver, and the poor for a pair of shoes, that pant after the dust of the earth on the head of the poor, and turn aside the way of the meek. And a man and his father will go into the same maid to profane my holy name, and they lay themselves down upon clothes laid to pledge by every altar, and they drink the wine of the condemned in the house of their God, little g. And they destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height Yet destroyed I the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars. He was strong as the oaks, yet I destroyed his fruit from above, and his roots from beneath. Also I brought you up from the land of Egypt, and led you 40 years through the wilderness, to possess the land of the Amorite. And I raised up your sons for prophets, and of your young men for Nazarites. Is it not even thus, O ye children of Israel, saith the Lord? But ye gave the Nazarites wine to drink, and commanded the prophets, saying, Prophesy not. Behold, I am pressed under you, as a cart is pressed that is full of sheaves. Therefore the flight shall perish from the swift, and the strong shall not strengthen his force. Neither shall the mighty deliver himself, neither shall he stand that handleth the bow, and he that is swift of foot shall not deliver himself. Neither shall he that rideth the horse deliver himself, and he that is courageous among the mighty shall flee away naked in that day, saith the Lord. Woo! That was a lot. I want to give you a little bit of a introductory piece here. I know that last week we started in chapter 4 on Yet Ye Have Not Returned, to gauge the heartbeat of the message of the series that God has laid on my heart. All of these things are happening, yet have you not returned unto the Lord. And that's what we need. That's what God desires, is to have those of us, whether you're just a couple steps away or miles away, to return unto the Lord. Because He still wants us to be near Him. All right, Amos portrayed great boldness and yet tact. And he captured the attention of the people and these hearers by pronouncing judgment first upon all their enemies, before delivering the burden, the true burden of the judgment upon Israel itself. And so we see that that he did this, and of course he did this in not a way. He didn't give any false pretenses. He was straightforward. He was honest and quite sharp in the way that he told them these things. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't say, well, let me tell you something. It's really not the greatest news. I think you're going to be okay, but there is something kind of not so good coming. It's not how Amos took charge of that at all. And that's exactly how these modern day preachers would probably try their best attempt at bringing forth any kind of thing that would be negative, would be sugar-coated like that. Would be, I want to just kind of guide you here. It's not going to be the greatest thing, but you're going to be okay. It's going to be fine. But yeah, there's a few little issues. Just tiptoe in. Tiptoe in. Don't want you to get let down too far. Don't get discouraged now. It's sickening.
Amen.
It's sickening. You know what? When I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me why. God doesn't just tell you you're wrong. He says you're abominable. He says you're wicked. He says you have transgressed against me, against my kingdom, against my Son, against my Holy Spirit, against my church, against my work. You have totally dropped the ball worse than you should have ever thought that you could. God will not do that. God didn't say, well, I don't know why you listen to that snake. He's a naughty fella. I don't know why, but now you got to force me to do what I really don't want to do. That's not how God handles things. Neither should it be the way His preachers and prophets handle things.
Amen.
Yeah, it's good.
Not how God intended it. Amos was not that way, and we're going to find. And I want to share some things that I've seen here about Amos quickly before we get into it, because I do want to try to get through. If we can get through it, I would like to. But with Amos, this was his prophecy that he put forth. And in chapter 7 and verse 10, we see that it was really issued at Bethel, which was the seat of idolatry in the northern kingdom. And he attacked Satan's stronghold, Bethel, when it's opposed with the idolatrous priest, which was Amaziah. He becomes even bolder in his preaching. See, this is how a true prophet of God takes it. When you're in a stronghold, when you're in a snake's den, it doesn't cause you to quiet down and back up. It causes you to go more further and bolder against those things, speaking to those den of vipers that they're not right. That's how Amos was. And we see that Amos, the purpose of that prophecy was to awaken Israel and its surrounding nations to the fact that a nation is both responsible and accountable for its sins. And I don't well, preacher, this is Memorial Day weekend. Why are you talking about God's judgment? Because you know what? Our nation has sinned against God.
Right. Amen.
And a nation is responsible and accountable for its sins to a thrice holy God.
Yes. Amen.
Our nation is not what it once was. Not by a long shot. Not in the same zip code as right. It's gone so far out of the way. And it's just ridiculous how this worked. Amos and Hosea were co-workers and may have even gone on preaching tours together. Hosea continued his work after Amos passed. Isaiah and Micah followed Amos's ministry, and they may have even heard him preach when they were kids. And so, and we see how strong Isaiah is in the things that he puts forth. I mean, that's why it's called the Bible within a Bible. There's just so much there in Isaiah, but we see that. And so we see that his prophecy is identified. He says of himself that the Bible says that he is a shepherd of Tekoa. His name means burden or burden bearer. It provides a key to the leading message of the book. So his great burden of the Lord that has been given him concerning the national sin of God's people. Delivering the message to God's people of this judgment that's coming, this accountability for national sins. All right? And he says that in his own testimony, no better testimony really can be given concerning that than his own, which you would find in chapter 7, verse 14 and 15, when he says that he was no prophet. He says, I was no prophet, neither was I a prophet's son, but I was a herdman and a gatherer of sycamore fruit. The Lord took me as I followed the flock. And the Lord said unto me, go prophesy unto my people Israel. He took a herdman. If you're looking on a scale of jobs, herdman is pretty low on the food chain. But I love the fact that from the palace to the herd and the keeper of the herd, it's all affected that way. So we want to look at that. So today we're going to begin here in chapter 1 and 2 to look at God's anger and the reasoning why that his judgment he will not be turning away. And we saw that over and over and over, right through his own people, from the enemies right through his own people. For 3 transgressions and for 4 will I not turn away the punishment thereof. All right, so this was the 4th, third time. Usually 3 strikes you're out. This is the 4th. It's just over and over and over. It's getting to the point of what we would call a breaking point. The straw that breaks the camel's back. You know, that one extra little thing that just the weight is there. And we see that the Lord even said that I am pressed of you, like a cart that's pressed when it's full of sheaves. So he's just at his breaking point with the sin and wants to get this going. So in verse 1, it mentions the earthquake. I find this is really interesting. This is really neat because we know that in Palestine, earthquakes are not an uncommon thing. All right? But this one was really severe in that Zechariah, 200 years later, made reference to it. Because it said, now in verse 1 it says that it was 2 years before the earthquake. Think about that. This was 2 years before the earthquake that it's telling us. And Zechariah, 200 years later, I'm going to read that for you as well. In Zechariah chapter 14, verse 4 and 5, the Bible says, "And his feet shall stand that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east, toward the west. And there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south, and ye shall flee into the valley of the mountains. For the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azel, yea, ye shall flee," listen to this, "like as ye fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah king of Judah, and the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with thee."
Amen.
200 years later, you're going to run just like you did in that earthquake 200 years ago, back in the days of Josiah the king, right? So we see all of this is in this Uzziah the king of Judah. It was making reference. That must have been an earthquake of epic proportions, that the scripture would start off saying, well, this is and you notice whenever something major happens, it's always referred to, it's always pinpointed as an instance of time of this happening. This earthquake was so great that Amos says this is 2 years before the earthquake happened. And then we go 200 years future, and Isaiah says, Zechariah says, you're going to flee just like you did 200 years ago from that great earthquake. It was an instance of time that's being referred to. That was so powerful. I thought that was really interesting to see that this earthquake was such a great instance that it's going to be recalled just like that. So we see that mentions the earthquake. We also see in verses 6 and 8, when it's talking about Gaza, we see that there's a lot of different things that are going on here. And I'm not going to just stay on each little thing, but each thing had its issue. Each thing had its pronouncement of judgment because of something. 3 and 4 times this has happened, and now I'm not going to turn away the punishment thereof. That because this has happened, they've done this. You notice that God didn't just say, "Oh, they've sinned against me 3 or 4 times, and I'm just gonna grind them to powder now. I'm gonna lay the hammer down on them." He tells us why. Isn't that great about the Lord, that He doesn't just punish without cause? He doesn't, but He's explaining why. Because it's that why that's going to help us not do those things. That's why this is written for our example and for our learning, is because we can adapt these things and say, you know what? And that's another thing that we ought to think very carefully of. We're often known in Christianity that we sin, and then we ask forgiveness, and we go right back to it again, and sin, and ask forgiveness, and go right back to it again, and ask forgiveness. You know what? God's got a timetable. God's got an amount of times that He's going to let you do that before something's going to happen. 3, you've done it 3 times, and now the 4th time. And He was consistent with that through the enemies of God and His own people. He is not treating His own people any better in this matter than He does the enemies of God. Because He's a just God and it's righteous to Him. And it's holy. Our judgment is a holy thing to Him. Okay? So He treats people equally that way. 3 and 4 times, and I will not turn away because they've done this. We better be careful, church, about continuing to go right back to the same old rat hole where we got bound up to start with. Don't break your bands and then be freed from it and then run right back into it again for bondage. God's not going to continue to put up with that. He is a long-suffering God. The fact that they even made it to the 4th time, that shows mercy. That shows long-suffering. We're not given a time frame in between these sins either. Maybe they repented for a while, maybe they were decent for a while, and then went back to it. I don't know the amount of time between these sins. God is long-suffering, and He is that way with us. But we got to understand that we can't keep running back to sin and think we're going to get by with it. And just, 1 John 1:9. That's not always going to work. I mean, yes, it's good to confess. Yes, you should. Yes, you should not have unconfessed sin in your life. But what I want you to understand is that we run a danger. Anybody in here like to be warned if you're in danger? Anybody at all? We should. We should want to know when we're in danger. But you are not exempt from judgment of God in this life just because of 1 John 1:9. God has always been faithful to forgive. But see, just because you're forgiven doesn't take away the responsibility of it. Yes, you're cleansed of that sin, but sometimes we still have to deal with the consequences. What do you mean? Let's say I go out and I kill somebody. Now, you guys know me. I would not kill anybody unless it was in defense of my own life or defense of my family or somebody like that. And I would gladly do that to protect them, because that's my job, is to protect them, even if it means costing me my own life in the process. But if I go out and I kill somebody, I can ask God to forgive me for killing that person, and He will. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to go to jail. That doesn't mean I'm not going to go to prison because I did it. Especially in the way that I would do it, in the way that it would have been done, right? Out of usually it's a premeditated thing in some form or another. You decide that all of a sudden you're going to take a life. That is premeditation. It doesn't have to be thought out weeks beforehand to be premeditated. I believe all murder is premeditated, because you decide at that moment, before taking their life, that you're going to do it. That's premeditated murder, in my book. I guess it's a good thing I'm not a judge, amen? I believe it all is. Okay? So, but what I want us to see is that we are in danger if we continue to delve into sin and think that we're just good because of 1 John 1:9. You can be cleansed from the sin, but you may still pay for it. You know what I mean? Just the way that God did with His own people. For 3 and for 4, I will not turn away this punishment. I will not turn away this punishment. We got to be careful. Man, I didn't even hardly get to the first page. There's so much here. But I believe that if we'll let the Holy Spirit take the things that we're hearing and we're studying, this is a Bible study. This is what we're doing. Right? So let's get in there. And please come back next week, bring somebody, and if they haven't caught up yet, have them go on to our tbcoutreach.com and get caught up in it. We're going to go through this and watch what God will show and share with us, because it's important that we realize the danger that we could be in and not even be aware of it. Over and over in the scripture, I would not have you be ignorant about whatever it is, about this or about that, concerning this, concerning that. God doesn't want ignorant or unaware people. That doesn't mean you're dumb. There's a difference between stupid and ignorant. Ignorance can be cured with education. Stupidity's forever. Sorry.
Amen.
This is all there is. There's no way around it. That's all there is. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the day. Thank you.